The following program contains views that are not those of WVTC, iNetworks Communications, their subsidiaries, affiliates, or financial supporters.
Any day now, I will hear you say goodbye, my love. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us at the Winning Victory Through Christ WVTC Radio, Chicago, Illinois, Alsip area. This is the Dbarge Show. My name is Dbarge. Today we're going to engage a friend of mine that goes all the way back to the 9th grade at Evanston Township High School. Lionel John Baptiste is a interesting and very fulfilling kind of a character in our life and in Evanston and many other places. We're going to explore today a freedom fighter, a friend, a scholar, a legal person, and a very, very, very influential person in our community. And that community is bigger than Evanston. Lionel John Baptiste.
Thank you, sir. Thank
How
you
you
for
doing
having
today?
me. So far, so good.
Good.
Thank you. I want to say hello to the audience from Winning Victory Through Christ. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Before I engage Brother Baptiste to start, we're going to talk about his early childhood years from birth. We're going to come all the way to present time, which will be the second gear. And in third gear, we're going to talk about what he sees that lies ahead of him in the future. Judge John Baptiste, father. He's a son, a husband, and a father. He was born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and immigrated to the United States at the age of 14. After high school, he matriculated into Princeton University in 1970 and graduating there with a BA in political science and a certification in African American history in 1974. At Princeton, he served as an officer of the Association of Black Collegiate, which is ABC. He was also a member of the Princeton soccer team for a year. After college, he moved to Brooklyn, New York, and worked as an elementary school teacher and adjunct professor as the director of special housing for NYC. His activism in New York, the Committee Against Dictatorship in Haiti, the Mobilization Committee Against Police Brutality, and others. Lionel eventually returned to his adopted home in Evanston, Illinois, and enrolled in law school in 1986, 12 years after college, with a full-time job as the executive assistant to the president of Malcolm X College at City Colleges of Chicago. An active family, he graduated from Chicago Kent College of Law in 1990. Lionel practiced law for 20 years in various areas of law, such as immigration, PI, probate, and transactional law, and worked on special cases such as the Mayer African American reparations case, 17 U.S. corporations in federal court. In 2001, he became the first Haitian American elected in the state of Illinois as alderman, city councilman of the city of Evanston, and for 3 consecutive terms serving 10 years on the city council. Beyond his regular duties as a municipal legislator, he advocated for equity in the city administration in hiring practices for police officers and firefighters. He also provided leadership to create structured, funded programs to help for police officers and to help youth who were facing difficulties to become productive citizens. He also worked to achieve equity for minority businesses' participation in the delivery of goods and services to. As well, Lionel led the passage of resolution in 2002 to support H.R. 40, a federal proposal to study reparations in the United States. The resolution also called for the local school districts to teach comprehensive American and world history. In March of 2011, he became the first Haitian American and sworn in as judge by the Illinois Supreme Court. Subsequently, he waged a hard-fought campaign to hold on to his seat as judge and was victorious in the primary and the general election of 2012. He is currently a family law judge. Lionel Jean Baptiste has always maintained his activism. He is currently a member of the NAACP. He is a founding member and past president of the Haitian American Lawyers Association, a founding member of the National Haitian American Elected Officials Network, a founding member of the Haitian Congress to secure dual citizenship for all Haitians born anywhere in the world, to a Haitian mother or Haitian father. He is in diaspora, which in essence continues the mission of the Haitian Congress to mobilize the Haitians living in the diaspora to reintegrate into Haitian society to help develop Haiti. Lionel continues to be involved in the national reparations effort in the United States. As an alumnus of Princeton, Lionel is an active member of the Concerned Black Alumni of Princeton Incorporated, a non-for-profit organization dedicated to the establishment of an academic applied center to combat and to eradicate racism at Princeton and beyond. I ask you too many questions today. I'm just going to let you talk because you can fill in the blanks from these different transitional places that I've seen that you've worked. Mm-hmm. And I'm really amazed because this is the first time that I had an opportunity last night to look at your history in the working since 9th grade. So I have a lot of respect. I must say this, I was honored to be at the street naming when they renamed McDaniel Avenue, the street that you live on, in your name while you live. Mm. It's obvious that what I just read, that you've been an amazing blessing to Evanston, and you've done a lot with your leadership abilities and with the resources that have been given to you. And as a friend, I didn't see this coming, although Martin High School and very, very rights-oriented, where the rest of us was singing and running around and playing sports. I'm really impressed with this, honestly, because I hadn't gone through the whole thing. Last night I read it.
Well, thank you very much, Don. I appreciate the invitation. As I say, I want to salute those who are listening from this radio station, Winning Victory Through Christ. And I think that that audience can relate to the notion to whom much is given, much is expected. So, I always say that if you have life and you're healthy, then you are gifted already and you have a lot that you could give to others to share with the world and try to make a difference. The work that you talk about when you say in high school, folks were, singing and playing sports. I was playing sports too. I was on the soccer team. I was all-state on the soccer team. And, if you guys would have had me in the modernization, I would have, been able to.
In the what?
In the modernization.
Moderations, yes.
Yeah, that was Don's singing group in high school. And we were in high school in the late 60s. So that was the time when the Temptations, the Miracles, and various other groups were setting the tone in a literal sense. So we all were interested in the same thing. And I would say that even though I brought with me maybe a different background, so to
Absolutely.
speak.
Let's talk
I was
about that.
born in Haiti, and even though Haiti is in the news, stays in the news as an unstable nation, its instability didn't drop from the sky. It was the first enslaved Africans who came to the conclusion that they could not continue to submit to the conditions that they were living under. And they organized themselves in 1791 and created a whole movement that led to their independence by defeating France and a number of other European nations that came to France's help under the leadership of Toussaint Louverture, that maybe many people may have heard about, more people should hear about. He was one of the most brilliant military strategists in the world. But we know that the history of the world is being told from a different perspective. So the history doesn't get outside of Haiti. But in Haiti, we were immersed in our own history, so we understood what was accomplished. So the psychosis of victimization was not one that, we bought into, even though we suffered greatly for having liberated ourselves. I've heard a professor from Northwestern say that for every day that we were enslaved, we resisted. Every day we were enslaved, we were resisting. So, which is a different departure from the general story. Yeah, so for every day that we were enslaved, we resisted, which is a departure from the story that we hear that we were subservient all the time and thankful to have been, slaves under the system of oppression that brutalized us, that raped our women, separated family, sold us on auction block, dehumanized us, and made us commodities. No human beings would have submitted to that without resistance. And that's the story we have to tell. So although we resisted individually, it wasn't until 1791 when a high priest, and many said that he was an imam, Boukman, decided to help mobilize the enslaved Africans and shifted the paradigm in terms of what the belief system was that they were being really brainwashed to adopt. And that was, he told them that, would your God want you to submit to this kind of system? Would your God want you to continue to be brutalized, continue to enrich the slave master? And would your God find that it was your divine kind of destiny to be in this position? And he called on them to reject that kind of, it is natural to them, that their natural God would have told them that you've got to avenge the wrongs that have been imposed upon you. You've got to fight back, you've got to resist, and that you've got to understand the difference between your friends and your enemies. And so the movement to liberate Haiti, an organized movement, began in August 1791 in a place called Bois-Caïman, and in translation, many people said that it is translated as close to the home of the imam. And so the effort to organize was being led by a spiritual leader. So the fight was waged under leadership of Toussaint Louverture at first, and Toussaint was eventually ambushed and tricked and taken by the French leaders out of the country into imprisonment in France, where he died in a prison. But when Toussaint was taken, Toussaint said, "You are mistaken as to what you are doing, because the roots and generate resistance until there's liberation." And so that's how Dessalines, his general, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, began to take over the movement and led the movement to a level of, Toussaint was more of a strategist. He compromised, he did a number of different things, reach some kind of legal conclusion to enslavement. Dessalines recognized that, look, the enemy was ruthless. He was willing to take our leader. He was willing to continue our enslavement, continue our suffering. Therefore, our position is uncompromising. We are not compromising. In fact, the call was for burn down the homes, cut off their heads, and let's liberate ourselves. So the movement to liberate Haiti shifted into a different gear, and the decisive battle was waged in November 1803, and that led to France being expelled from the island. And on January 1st, 1804, then the nation was declared independent. In fact, 2 days ago, we celebrated 119th anniversary of the independence of Haiti. So that began a whole different chapter in the fight to free African people. Because not only did Dessalines lead Haiti, the enslaved Africans, to victory, at that time the nation was called Saint-Domingue, but in 1804 it was declared, renamed Haiti, Land of Mountains, which was an original name that the native people had given it. And at that time, the leadership began a course to try to move forward and rebuild the nation. Not only that, but during that period too, Haiti became a strong ally of Latin American freedom fighters. Simon Bolivar and others came to Haiti and asked for assistance to help in their struggle for independence in Latin America. Today, Venezuela has a big bust of Haitian heroes because of the contribution that Haiti made to that whole area, and a number of nations were liberated. And the conditions under which Dessalines and leaders who follow him decided to help Bolivar is that they had to liberate the slaves. They had to end slavery. So it was unconditional. And there are stories in our history where Dessalines' troops would take a boat that was going to North America, slaves, and bought the slaves off of the slave masters to liberate them. But this kind of historical occurrence, did not go unnoticed. You had fought a protracted war to liberate yourself from the most powerful nation in the world at that time, France. You had democracy, 1863, for emancipation to take place. The slave system in the United States was so productive that it was on the shoulders of the slaves that the United States was able to flourish and maintain its society. And obviously, that was a disruption, because that was a lesson to a number of the enslaved people in North America. Hence, you had Denmark Vesey, Gabriel Prosser, Nat Turner, and others trying to organize to replicate what happened in Haiti. And so the whole Western world was shocked by all of this. In fact, some of them have said it must have been a virus that took over these Africans to lead them to this kind of action. That's right. And so France did not accept this kind of defeat sitting down, because France, its entire society depended on the riches that were being created in Haiti. Almost, they said that 4/5, that's almost 80% of its citizens benefited in terms of their daily life from the riches that was being generated from the enslavement of the Africans in Haiti. To such an extent that they, in 1825, the French, Bonaparte, who was the leader of France at that time, organized an armada of ships to threaten a reinvasion of Haiti, to occupy it, unless Haiti paid reparations. So in 1825, they sought from the Haitian leadership at that time an obligation to pay 150 million francs in gold bullion, which has an equivalent value today of $22 billion. And so they forced Haiti to pay reparations from 1825. Haiti didn't complete that payment until 1947. It's a significant amount of time it took. And so that means the production of the nation was organized around the repayment of that debt. And you have subsequent to that, in 1915, the United States invaded and occupied Haiti until 1934. So we had all these disruptions and interruptions. And prior to that, the United States did not recognize Haiti as an independent nation for 58 years. The Emancipation Proclamation here in the United States, that they finally recognized Haiti, really for the purpose of encouraging Africans here to return to Haiti. But I'm saying all of that to say, as a child growing up, as a youth growing up in Haiti in the educational system, that's what we learn. We memorize our history. And so you come with a certain pride in your accomplishment, in your knowledge, in your understanding that you were equal to any man. And so no one could really put you down because of the color of your skin, because you had stood up and really helped resurrect the African humanity out of the circumstance that it was in. So, you know, I came to the United States at 14, and luckily I came at a period of time when the United States was in motion. The African liberation movement for civil rights. You had Malcolm, who was talking about that we had to stand up and be a man. We cannot accept, you know, the demeaning treatment that we were receiving in the society. You had King fighting for rights, leading movements for rights. You had growing, evolving, the Panthers movement, the Nation of Islam, a number of movements that sought to regain and protect the humanity of our people here that had come from a fight, not only coming out of slavery, but a fight against Jim Crow, against all kinds of mistreatment, and the psychosis of the racism that was forcing us to step off sidewalks because there was a white man coming, crossing path with us, to force us to, you know, accept conditions that were demeaning to our people and our women, and forcing us to threatening to some of the folks in the South. You know, examples of all that is the major massacres that were committed against our people, whether it was Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, whether it was Elaine, South Carolina, and various other examples of the suffering of our people here. So it was contextual, right? I mean, I came from Haiti, I came from a history. I'm here in the United States in a context where people in motion, we're moving. trying to change our reality. And the real deal is that today we're not in 1619 anymore, right?
No.
We're not
No.
at the auction block. Our movement was a movement for humanity
Right.
that has pushed this nation today. So I think African Americans and people who were struggling to better the society made it greater and made it more responsive to the needs of people, and it will continue, because any time a people is oppressed, it will resist, it will fight back.
Always.
And you know, it's a fight for strategy, it's a fight for tactics, it's a fight for organization. You know, so that's where we're at right now.
You just raised a question in me, and you also gave me an answer. My question is, since you were 14 years old when you left Haiti, which was a pretty much black
It's a black nation.
nation, you leave there, come to Evanston, of all places, not the
Right.
west side or the south side of Chicago,
Right.
but you come into a predominantly white suburb to a high school that was 78% white and 22% everything else. It was almost like getting out of a bucket of hot water, getting into about a cool water bucket, like difference. What did you actually see and experience and feel as a ninth grader? Because I looked at you were absolutely different than any other of my friends. You were, you know, but I didn't know your background. I didn't know what you came out of. And so you came here and you saw justice in your mind, you saw injustice with your eyes. I'm trying to figure out how you actually reacted.
Well, again, I think that are shaped by the environment that we come up from, that equip us to deal with the reality that we face going forward. I remember a friend of mine, Lord Shepherd, used to say, knowledge of history is your self-defense. So to the extent that you're imbued with who you are, then the context that you walk into doesn't have to be one that is an obstacle. It doesn't, because luckily, and I always say that I'm, you know, blessed and as the old sisters in the African American church would say, and highly favored. You know, I was healthy. I didn't have mental deficiencies. I was more than capable of meeting the challenges, whether it was educational or otherwise. I didn't speak English when I first got here, but I grew up in a family I had 5 sisters who were speaking English to me every day. 4 of them were born here in the United States, so they were speaking English. And my mother put me to school very early. I got here on a Sunday, on a Monday I was in school. And she herself was not an educated person, but she had high expectations. She was extremely smart and prepared us to be, to meet the challenges. So coming into Evanston, a suburb, you know, again, what I found was a community that was not antagonistic to me. No one was chasing me down to do anything to me. Perhaps my parents, because my mother initially, because she left me in Haiti and came here. I rejoined her later. She was in Tennessee, working in white people's kitchen and, you know, cleaning their homes and taking care of their kids and doing everything that she had to do, and she had to live in their garage. So she faced more of the objective limitations because of her race. When I say objective, you know, it's not always that somebody have to say to you, call you a name, put you down, you know, stuff like that. If they limit you, you cannot sit at the same table. You cannot have access to the things that they have, and you're working for them. I mean, she accepted her lot because she came here to work, right? United States was still perceived as a leg up for many folks who were growing up in the islands. You grew up in the island with certain history, certain consciousness of who you are, but materially, the United States had extracted so much riches from so many places that it provided a different quality of life for people, at least those options. When our people, when my mother and stepfather were in the South, they experienced a limitation, but it was not the limitation that registered as like a sort of racial hatred. They were not subject to mobs chasing them down and doing all kinds of stuff. So by the time I got here, as I said, you know, I was put in a system where I was being educated. I was able to move about freely without limitation. Going to school, I was able to compete with other kids. And as I said, the mastery of language and stuff was something that evolved. I mean, I run into you guys who, you know, although some of you guys will call me foreigners, but it was all in fun. I played sports. I joined Evanston Vanguard Rifle Drill Team with my friends. I, you know, hung out and participated in the society and immersed myself fully. So I didn't come from, the qualitative experience was more cultural, right? Because I was used to certain cultural expressions that were not prominent. And every time I crossed paths with a black person, I wanted to speak Creole to them or French. And every time, you know, when it came time to play sports, I wanted to kick the ball. I wanted to play soccer. That's what I grew up playing. So there was those kind of differences, but the antagonism, I was in classes with white kids. I was as competitive against them in government and all kinds of stuff. So I didn't come from limitations. I came from opportunity, and my mother was, again, although she didn't have the means, but she had high expectations for us. And so, you know, we pressed on. So that's the way that I've always dealt with my situation. I know who I am, and I'm no less than anybody else. I grew up with high expectations.
Right.
So that's
and
where we are.
My observation of you, as I think back to ninth grade, you were the only person that we knew that was always fighting injustice in a place where we were given the spoon, the knife, the fork. What white folks, we had little white girlfriends, you know, we'd go over to Skokie and eat dinner with them after school sometimes, the rich people. And so you're free now. So what is there to fight for? You know, there's no picket signs, there's no nooses, there's no trees waiting to be hung, there's no apparent abrupt and abusive kind of treatment towards you. So you're in Evanston, it's nice and mild, you know, your white kids is 80% white. And then, of course, us, you know, you acclimated too. Because what I saw in you was you were fighting injustice, but you did it in a way that was sophisticated. It wasn't like we rebelled. It wasn't rebellion. You know, some of us rebelled. I remember one time we had a riot Black again, my sophomore year. We were in our sophomore
Probably
year.
after a football game or
Yeah,
something.
and we shut the whole school down. So I asked myself a question: how did a few, at that time, Negroes, in a school that's almost all white, in a city that's white, how did we get that much power that we closed the school down? That always stuck in my memory. But
Yeah.
you were like the negotiator, the thinker, you were our 9th and 10th grade attorney. You hadn't become one yet, but you were.
The reality is that, I mean, I appreciate that kind of compliment, but, we were in a context. Remember, Evanston itself, the black community in Evanston, evolved from a number of folks who came up with white folks as servants. Secondly, a number of folks came from Abbeville, South Carolina, where they were victim of, lynching and all kinds of stuff during the migration where people left. And so they were engaged themselves through the churches, through Second Baptist, through Ebenezer, to try to make a way out of no way, right? You had, at that time, evolving in the community, Mayor Morton, who herself had come up from the South, was a graduate student at Northwestern University. She couldn't live on the campus,
Right.
but she was a student nevertheless. There was the Black Y, separate but equal kind of concept. You had folks, doctors who created the community hospital.
That's where I went.
So the fight back was going on. It's not like people were standing by waiting for something to happen. People were organizing, they were fighting back, creating institutions. The various lawyers and doctors who emerged in the society and the community lived in the community. And modeled the kind of, Dr. Cheeks, Dr. Keith, and various others. There was Brew Alexander, who was a fiery lawyer.
Oh, yeah, he was.
In the community. So my coming into the community didn't come in, it was not inconsistent with what it is that the society was doing at that time. My involvement at the high school was one where, again, I come from a society where we identify and recognize folks who make their contributions on whether they were black or white. So I'm in a school where history was being taught, but there was no black history being taught. So, and if you remember, Mr. Gehring, who was a first teacher who started teaching us black history because we demanded black faculty. We took over the superintendent's office. And there were examples. Remember, there was at Northwestern University, some of those students had taken over the president's office at the institution and demanded a black house. Some of them were leaders of the movement for black history, for black studies. Dr. James Turner, who recently passed, was head of Africana Studies at Cornell, but he graduated from Northwestern University. There were a number of others. So people were modeling the kind of behavior that was there for us to follow. I felt maybe a little more strongly to raise my voice, but while I was raising my voice, Tony White, my best friend who passed, and others, Hecky Powell and others, when we took over the superintendent's office, we were all together. So while, I appreciate the recognition of special contribution I might have made, but it was part of a continuum. It was not against the tide. It was not, something that shocked and surprised, because I couldn't do things alone. You know, we don't make changes by ourselves. We make changes through collective work and effort that people put their hands together to make things happen. You know, so that's what happened. You remember Mr. Downing, I don't know whether you remember when those new faculty members were coming, Leftwich and others, that as a result of our protests and our demand, more faculty were recruited. So,
Well, I left in '68, so I didn't get that other year.
you went to
Oakland, California.
Oakland, California.
We
Okay.
moved, so I didn't get a chance to ride
see
that
the
out,
evolution,
to be
yeah.
a part of that too.
Right.
I was more of the fighting kind, physically. You know, I like the military aspect of it. You know, if it was a fight, I was, you know, let me get my stick and start whooping them from the school across the canal to Skokie, and take them back to their parents and stuff. For sure. I got in trouble for throwing a
that,
boy
too.
in the canal and his bike with him.
Okay.
So I was the Nat Turner.
Some people protected you.
Yeah, some people.
You with
did.
us right now.
Them white folks from Skokie was looking for me to try to lynch
You're
me.
Free. You're free.
They sent the lynch mob.
Yeah.
But I just my memory has to, you know, I see you now, and let's come up to current status. Not only did you have your law firm, and by the way, when I first came back after 21 years, when I ran into you, that was a wonderful moment of celebration. And the first thing you asked me, you said, "So, are you and Ricky, Peter, Otto, and Joe gonna get back together? Because you wanted us to finish what we started." You said, "I'm a lawyer, and if you need me, I'll handle your contracts, and you wasn't even gonna charge us for it." I was like, "Wow, guys, look!" And then, of course, drugs, alcohol, and a lifestyle that takes many of us down. Took two of them.
Right.
And
It
it
was
didn't happen.
intentional. It was a movement against our evolution.
Exactly. So my memory got frozen from the 9th and 10th grade.
Yeah.
One, as
Evanston,
my
there was a
respect to
gap
our
there.
relationship.
Right.
And I wasn't here to see the grooming and the blossoming of after high school and college and all the things that you've accomplished to get to this point. There's another thing too in your life that's very significant, and I'm looking at her right now, your wife. Tell us the story of how you, boy, this is a good one. I see her shaking her head.
Well,
Tell us how you all got together, because you weren't at Evanston Township High School.
No.
So he had to go somewhere to find
you. I met my wife at Princeton.
At Princeton?
She was a student at Princeton.
Okay.
We were very culturally compatible. She was from Trinidad, from Haiti, and we both came to the United States around the same age range. And we, shared similar vision in terms of our willingness to stand up for people and to fight for what's right. We both came from very large families. She's one of 13. I'm one of 6 on my mother's side and one of 12 on my father's side, and large extended families. So there was a competitor made us a match, and she was beautiful, so I couldn't,
And she can run fast. I remember she was.
Yeah, luckily.
I remember when she was working out 30 years ago when I came 33 years ago, and she invited us to the track. Boy, she took off, and we was like, you know what? That's a lot of work. So what Pam and I did is we says, okay, she wants to do that. We went and got us some bikes, so we can ride fast.
Yeah, no, she was. She was a marathon runner, ran a number of marathons, and became a triathlete. Run long distance, bike long distance, swim long distance and stuff. So at that time I was carrying her bag because my days as an athlete were, behind me. But we both had, very high standards for education, for our kids, for our community. So all of that compatibility brought us and has kept us together for it will be 47 years soon.
Wow.
And
47.
47 years of marriage, and then soon it'll be 50 years since we've been together.
How old is Aisha, your daughter?
Aisha, I don't know. She's 46.
46.
Now. Yeah. So
And Allende is
40. Just turned 40 on the 26th.
I guess we are getting up
on
there.
on December 26th. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's my wife is the leadership of the family. She is the person who will pay attention to the details to make sure that it's not just a general call, but it's also the specific applications.
Right.
And that's important because no movement, no change, no sustainability can be achieved through a general declaration. I mean, I could declare stuff all day long, but the application, the work, the intelligence, is extraordinary. And in all the campaigns that we've ran together, I say we because it's always a collective thing, that she was the brilliant organizer of the campaigns to make sure that we were victorious, and luckily we've won campaigns that we've ran, including a write-in campaign that we had to do as well. And the campaign for the judgeship was a much broader base that we had to outreach to Evanston, Skokie, Niles, part of Winnetka, part of
Northbrook? Did you go that far? Wilmette?
some of Wilmette just Park. So it was an organizing effort. So, and I would say that we both have been organizers. So by the time, prior to even being aldermen, we were organizing in our own community, in our own neighborhood as Canal Park neighbors. We joined with others who had wanted to maintain the quality of life in the community. It wasn't, that's who we are. We you know, I can't, she can't always be on the front line while we have kids growing up and stuff like that. But, you know, the philosophy, the consistency, the commitment is shared.
And so now, tell us just a little bit about some of the, I don't want to say downers, but some of the opposition that you've had in the past, you know, in the struggle for freedom and excelling to where we are now. What were some of the most difficult things that we faced?
The challenges.
Challenges, what I want to say.
You know, the struggle for change is not an event. And it's not, again, a general declaration. It's a lot of perseverance, and it's a lot of commitment and sacrifices. So sacrifice of time, that means taking time from family at times. It also is sacrifice using your own resources sometimes, limited as they might be, to try to objectives, and supporting others who are doing stuff, coming out of our pockets, making donations. That's our way of, supporting. And also we've faced people who, again, the reason why we had to do a write-in is because we had some enemies who found a way to manipulate the situation to kick us off the ballot. At a particular point in time.
For judge?
Folks who were, it wasn't for judge, it was for one of the races for alderman.
Alderman, right.
Might have been the second race. We had 3 runs. And it was an individual who had been watching me over a long period of time and felt that I was arrogant because I was standing for something.
Standing for justice, you're arrogant.
So, they concluded that I shouldn't get all that I was getting, and so they fought back. We were organizers, so we were able to overcome that. There are others too who, even when you're fighting for them, they may take a position that, they draw some general conclusion and try to put you down, call you names, and declare that, take libelous position against you, defamatory. But we persevere because we believe that in the righteousness of what it is that we're trying to do. Right. That's the key thing.
I want to thank you for taking the opportunity to come. You drove from a long ways. I know the traffic was crazy. Lionel Jean-Baptiste, a judge, attorney, civil rights worker, awesome individual, family man. I wanted to ask you a question because I know that you have been very engaged and involved at the top of the situation of reparations. So what I would like for you to do is I would like to, although I have my definition and understanding of reparations, I would like for you, for our listening audience, to define it from your perspective, reparations.
Well, it's probably very expensive. When I say expansive, I'm talking about large, broad. But, reparations covers not only compensation for harm done, it also covers issues of rehab of those who have been injured by putting forth programs and approaches to for people to regain their sense of being human beings, functional and operational in the society. When you have the mass incarceration of black individuals in this country that is pervasive and ongoing over a long period of time, so a number of youth find themselves in the system. You also have the kind of denial of equal opportunity historically at the level of education. So you need that kind of rehabilitation. There's issue of restitution of things that have been taken away from people. And so in the case, I gave an earlier example of what happened in Haiti in 1825, where Haiti had to pay France for at gunpoint, significant amount of wealth. Haitians have the right to restitution of that wealth at a level of today's value of the billions that it is the equivalent of today. And in the city of Evanston, for example, the city council has decided to pay reparation to people who have been victims of redlining. Historically, from 1919 to 1969 in the city of Evanston, the government had been complicit with realtors and banks to redline, literally redline the black community and force a concentration of black people in that area. And they wouldn't give loans, they wouldn't allow them to access certain property. And it was homes were even moved literally from the lakefront where property was much more expensive. Black people owned these homes, and these homes were put on flatbed trucks and moved. So, it's compensation, it's rehabilitation, it's restitution, and there's a number of other categories. But ultimately, it's really repairing the harm that was done to people in the many forms that it might take. So that's what I would say about reparations.
I saw reparations from my perspective as I compared it with an automobile accident. You know, if you're riding down the street and a guy comes from somewhere, you don't see him, hit and totals the car. Clear everything, and everybody goes to the hospital or whatever happens, you're going to go get an assessment medically. You broke your neck or arm or whatever. Your car's going to get an assessment. It's going to go to an adjuster. The adjuster's going to look at every detail and see that this car can be repaired. These are the things that can be repaired. Or the car's totaled. It's totally lost. If it's totally lost, then you're going to get a check to replace that car. That's reparations. That's the way I saw reparations when you all were brought it up in Evanston and were trying to adjudicate it. And everything that you said, and this is for the education and understanding of people who might not have a concept or might be influenced by some of the things that you're saying in your conceptual of this. Some people think that it's just money. And when I heard about the reparations, I was a little bit too late to make it to that meeting at my old church where my father was the pastor that you all had. And it was like I got a call about 8:30 or 9 o'clock that night, so I didn't make it. I would have loved to have been there.
Yeah.
But that's a worthy cause, because the damage for us is we're still totaled.
Yeah. It is. You're right. That's why when we talk about reparation, compensation is part of what we have to talk about in terms of the remedy for the harm. So we are paying remedy to the those who were victims of redlining in the city of Evanston, with the limitation of funds that was committed. We, the city council, under the leadership of Robin Ruth Simmons, who was an alderman, had committed $1 million a year to repay reparations over the course of 10 years. And the source of the revenue was coming from the tax revenue from the sale of recreational marijuana. So the thing about it is that everything that we do, that's why I say it's not just a general declaration. You got to put some specifics in there.
Right.
So some might argue, well, you're getting it from, marijuana, this, that, and the other. And it's not a morality play that we're dealing with. It's a question of actual compensation for those who have lost the value of their home, lost the capacity and the opportunity to be able to participate in this process of real estate acquisition, maintaining it, et cetera, et cetera. They were harmed by the banks refusing to give them loan. They were harmed by the government,
insurance companies,
the government sanctioning that, et cetera, et cetera. But again, when we talk about rehabilitation, the compensation is not adequate. It's not individual compensation, put money in my pocket and that's it. I need the institutions to be functioning in a way that assists, that makes our children productive citizens in this. If the majority of your budget is about incarceration of black kids, when it comes, I should say, earmarked towards, black youth is about spending money to put them in jail, to do enforcement against them. Shift that paradigm. Rehabilitate them, try to move them forward, make them productive citizens. Give them vocations, whether it's in IT, whether it's in electricity, carpentry. Equip them with the tools to try to make a living. So it's a broad spectrum of possibilities. In fact, H.R. 40 is that House Rule 40, which Congressman Conyers from Detroit, Michigan which had not gotten any traction until just about now, that has enough congressmen to pass the thing out of the House. Its objective is to study the impact of slavery, and we know it's multiple. It's not just deprivation of material stuff, but it's also, there's a mental
and spiritual
component.
Right.
And so there's that objective that needs to be pursued, but also to study how we find what remedy is appropriate to repair the wrong, the harm that's been done to a people. So it's a broad spectrum of it. Right now, the tip of the spear has been the city of Evanston. They had passed the ordinance, identified the sum of money, and began to award it, the harm. Now, there are multiple municipalities and regional and state entities, governmental entities, that have begun to take the lead. The city of Evanston, under the leadership of Robin Ruth Simmons, held, and I should say the National African Americans Reparations Commission held the second annual municipality reparations conference. Last year there were about 30 municipalities that participated. This year, 100 or more participated. So it's a growing movement, and that's where things are evolving. A number of universities, right? Brown University, under the leadership of former President Ruth Simmons, to grant scholarship to help remedy the educational inequality that existed. Harvard just decided to set aside $100 million to compensate for harm that they've done to African Americans through experimentation and all kinds of crazy, inhumane kind of practices. Princeton University did a slavery study to uncover the participation, implication of Princeton in slavery, how they benefited in their practices. About the first 7 presidents owned slaves.
Is Dr. Cornel West a part of that? Or is
Cornell is at Harvard now, so I don't know what he's relative to movement.
Okay.
I know that he speaks on a number of things. I don't know whether he's involved in that. There's also Princeton has a theological seminary that too has taken the lead in identifying harm that has been done historically and remedies that have to be paid.
Right.
So it's
They came to Evanston to be with you all in this movement.
Glover. That was
Danny Glover.
Danny Glover.
Right.
That's correct.
Right. I know they say, you gotta come, Danny Glover's here too. I'm like, it's 9:30.
Okay.
Get
All right.
get
Well,
over.
you know, he came back the year after, and they had this year too. They had another town hall meeting after the meeting of the on the conference.
So
on various
Robin, is she working
municipalities.
nationally?
Robin
on this?
has created an organization called First Repair Incorporated.
Okay.
And she lectures various places and advises folks who are trying to make that happen. Again, going from the general call to
Okay.
the specific application of it.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's what's happening.
So we are leaning toward a subject, since we don't have much time. We were requested to handle a certain area that we'd like to talk about, and we only have a few minutes left to do it.
But let me
I'll
also
let you
say,
what you're gonna say.
for people who are observing, I talked about Haiti in terms of historical
Okay.
work. It currently is facing significant challenges trying to right itself on a path to be productive. Throughout the Western Hemisphere and throughout the Caribbean, we know that all of those nations, black nations, Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad, and others, were part of the mill, so to speak, producing profits for England, for
Yes.
the Francophone nations, for France, various other entities, and even the Netherlands and Belgium. People continue to fight. Right now, the Francophone nations, the Anglophone nations have organized themselves to demand direct reparations from the monarchy in England. And the Haiti itself is engaged in a process of trying to maintain good, stable governance, because no nation can move itself forward without having stable governance to help its people prosper. And even on the African continent, where historically the colonialism had led to France controlling the revenues from the reserves generated by a number of Francophone nations. The monies were being deposited directly in France's coffers, and France would benefit from investment, but these nations would have to pay France to keep its money. We're talking about Cameroon, Senegal, and others. They now have organized themselves to take back control over these resources.
Great.
The African continent has organized itself into the African Union, which has 54 nations that are looking at policies to try to recoup its resources. And many of those nations, even though they are coming out of corruptions, because many of them are run by neo-colonists who are serving the interests of the masters, but the fight back is one for not turning their back on trying to reach equity for their people. They understand the enrichment of the West is a byproduct of the impoverishment of the African nations. So there's a real fight back. There's a movement. That's why we say we're not in 1619. We're not in 1492, we're not in 1885 when European nations carved Africa among themselves. There's been a lot of liberation movements, whether it was against apartheid, whether it was Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau. You remember Rhodesia became Zimbabwe. It's all about movement. So I see the world from a perspective of forward movement, right?
Right.
I mean, there may be some, I think it was brother who, Jamaican brother who led the movement in the world. He said, forward ever, backwards never. And he was really looking at the motion of history is forward.
Right.
Even when folks say we want to make America great again, we want to take it back to days of, when there was a perception of domination, we're not stepping off the sidewalk anymore. We're not doing that. We're not all that we have as a people. That doesn't mean that we don't have episodes. I say that history is a video. It's not a photograph. So we may have difficulties. We know that we have a lot of young brothers killing each other. We have a lot of folks doing harm to one another. The fratricide is really something that is a sore, a wound in the body of the African people. However, the motion of history is forward motion. It's not backwards. So that's where we are. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today, to share a moment, and with the entity being winning victory through Christ. Christ was a freedom fighter.
Yes, he was.
So let's be clear about that.
Yes. In fact, Christ is anointed with power to crush the wicked. And we got a lot of wicked that needs to be crushed. So let's join the Christ reality and get it done.
It's a process. Christ does it through a lot of negotiation. He didn't use the bats that you used to use to beat up people.
That's true. Thank you so much, Judge.
All right, brother.
I appreciate you for coming and being a part of WVTC. Today I'm going to call you again, and we'll do something a little different next time. But and thank your wonderful wife, Lenora, for standing by you and working with you all of these years. And we look forward to seeing you back. Next time I think when you come back, you might have to say something too. Is that okay? She's shaking her head. No.
She doesn't do that.
Okay.
But we want to, I'm Judge Lionel Jean-Baptiste. I appreciate the opportunity to share some information. And I would call on folks to support the Dbarge radio show, to continue to tune in to the great information that is being shared on the air. Thank you.
Thank you so much, bro.
Thank you.
All right.
Brother. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining the BARGE show today. I hope it's been informative and a blessing in your life. And I'd love for you to tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your family, and all the people that you don't know about the Dbarge show. Join us next week, Wednesday at 6 o'clock, and we'll move further in this struggle.
Views made on the preceding program are not those of WVTC Radio, iNetworks Communications, or their financial supporters.
Winning victory through Christ. WVTC also